Okay, we need to get going. This is a very, very full class. Welcome to Disaster Preparedness 101. This is a class I teach every season, and I do have several versions of this class. So this is the 30-minute version of the class. So let's get started with our presentation. So this is a guide to living on the Suncoast. And are you prepared? And you know, we're about 10 days out from the beginning of hurricane season. But our office is a IFAS extension and sustainability, and we are a partnership between Sarasota County and the University of Florida, as well as the USDA. We have several program core areas, including agriculture, lawn and garden, natural resources, nutrition, and healthy living, which is what I fall under, as well as youth development. The university is an equal opportunity institution, and we know that hurricane season is upon us, and it will begin June 1st, and it does go all the way through November 30th. So many times people feel like the beginning of November, they're free and clear, not quite. We have to make our way all the way through that month. So here's just an overview real quickly of what we'll be covering in today's 30-minute presentation. And remember that the first week is on us. We can't all rely on our counties to care for us at the very beginning. There's a lot for them to do, a lot of reporting they need to handle. And as well as those semi-trucks need to be cleared to be released down to the roads, which means there needs to be safe road conditions for them to travel. So we need to be prepared to be self-sufficient for at least 7 days. And there's all different types of disasters. And when we look on the news today, we saw that the tornadoes that hit through Iowa, but there are all different types of disasters to consider, and it's not just hurricanes, but we are the lightning capital of the country. So we do have some very severe lightning storms, tornadoes, which can be spawned with hurricanes, and flooding, fire, earthquakes, and today we will focus mostly on hurricanes. So here is the Atlantic hurricane season forecast, and this forecast does change all the time. This is the most recent, but again, once we get into season, you might see numbers changing. And here is the list of the 2024 Atlantic hurricane names. They do go in alphabetical order. It used to be that when the last name was used, that it would begin to use the Greek language. They did away with that process, and now they start over with a brand new alphabet. But let's hope that we don't get to that point this year. So what is the difference between a hurricane watch versus a hurricane warning? Well, it's usually when they are issued. So typically the watch is when you're just watching and waiting. You're seeing that cone of opportunity. You know, a storm was spawned off of the coast of Africa, and now you wait to see its path. Well, when that's typically hits its 74-mile-an-hour winds or higher, usually it's 48 hours in advance of the anticipated onset of those tropical force winds. So you have 48 hours, basically 2 days, to begin to prepare, whether you're bringing in your lanai furniture, putting plants away, filling up your car with some gas and so forth. But you have 48 hours before you're going to begin to feel the effects of the wind. The hurricane warning is issued 36 hours in advance of the anticipated onset of those winds. And that is a great time to, if you don't have those hurricane shutters up, to make sure they are up and that you already have your plan in place of if you're going to be sheltering at home, traveling to a friend's home or a relative's home, or if you'll be going to an evacuation center, but knowing your options. So you might be familiar with the hurricane wind scale. And really, when we get into that wind scale, you have to remember that even a Category 1 will produce some damage, and it can produce some significant flooding. So don't underestimate a Category 1 or Category 2 when they are beginning to make those predictions. And many times storms look like they're going to come in at a Category 2 or Category 3 and then quickly speed up, and they come in much higher than that. But if you look down to Category 4 and 5, there you'll see catastrophic damage, which means also catastrophic flooding. So there are some things we need to do ahead of time. And first of all, you're doing that now, right? You're gaining or gathering your information to create your plan. We'll talk about assembling our kit and supplies, staying informed, and I'll show you where you can go to for that kind of information. Following food safety guidelines, so please join me on those other classes to make sure that you know how to handle your food and know your post-disaster risks. Creating a plan ensures that you and your family will be prepared both physically, but also mentally and emotionally. So one of the first things that you should do if you are new to the state of Florida, because every county in the state of Florida has an alert system, but you have to register for this alert system, and you can go online to your county and ask for the alert system. Then you can download or just type in your application and information, and it will automatically be downloaded on your phone. Now's a great time to buy that battery-operated radio, and if you can buy a weather radio, that's even better. And those do fly off the shelves, I should say. Learn your risks in your specific area. I mean, we all know that in the state of Florida, we're vulnerable to hurricanes, but also pay attention to your community. What roads or land masses flood easily where you're located, even in just a rain event. Know your evacuation zone and your FEMA flood zone. And where can we go for a lot of this information? In the Emergency Preparedness Event Guide. And this is the brand new guide that just came out about a week, 10 days ago. You will find it at your county offices, as well as your libraries. I've even seen them in some of the grocery stores. Now, this one is for Sarasota County, but every county has an emergency preparedness guide. All kinds of great information, nice format this year to get the information. And there are some local news stations that we can pay attention to as well, whether it's Channel 8, Channel 10, Fox News, ABC, and then your local news stations. For us here in Sarasota, it's the Channel 6, the SNN, and Channel 7, which is our ABC Sarasota. These are great resources. I love our local radio or weather stations or news stations in comparison to sometimes those national stations. Sometimes those national stations have a tendency to place somebody on the beach and make it more of a sensational news event instead of what's really going on. So to get the down and gritty news of what's happening in your community, pay attention to your local news broadcast. So the first thing we want to do is complete a family communication plan. So update your contact information. Include those out of town contacts, but also if you are planning on vacating your home, evacuating your home before a storm, make sure you take the phone numbers of your neighbors who might be staying and who will have eye contact on your property so that you can call them to find out if any damage has occurred to the street and to your home. But think of a meeting place, the safest place in your home to meet. And that's mostly for tornadoes, because remember, tornadoes do happen here in Florida and they can be spawned by hurricanes. So having that internal room, closet, bathroom in your home is a great spot. You want that room not to have any windows. And sometimes we ask people to please take in some heavy blankets and pillows with you into that area to shelter you from any flying debris. Then you might need just to discuss meeting places outside of your home in case of flooding or fire that's occurred in your neighborhood, to have those meeting places outside your home, whether it's a parking lot, a restaurant, a business, and so forth. Now's a good time to plan for those with special needs, and every county has a medical needs application. You can go onto our county website, and I'll show you that near the conclusion of this presentation. And you can have that person, or you can apply for them. Plan for pets, know your closest shelter, and I'll give you that list of shelters in a bit. But determine if you're going to leave, when you're going to leave, and of course, where you're going to evacuate to. So now is a great time to begin to plan while it's beautiful and sunny outside, because there is a lot to do when we go ahead to prepare for a disaster. So let's talk about hurricanes and preparing, of course, extra flashlights and lanterns and batteries. June 1st to June 14th of this year, flashlights and any type of disaster preparedness equipment. And I have written a blog on that as well, indicating that those items are now will be tax-free come June 1st through the 14th. So that's a great time to go ahead and buy that battery-operated weather radio, lanterns, your batteries, flashlights, and so forth. But you'll also need a 7-day food supply that's high energy, low salt, non-perishable, and a 7-day water supply, which is 1 gallon per person per day, plus water for cooking, washing, and for your pets. That's a lot of water to start to gather. What I suggest and what I do is every time I'm at the store, I pick up a gallon or two of water, and I start that process really at the end of April, beginning of May, to bring that water into the house. Purchase a manual can opener. Those fly off the shelf quickly as well. And just, again, be prepared to be self-reliant for at least 7 days after a storm. Shelf-stable foods, what do we mean by that? They're non-perishable, they don't need cooking or refrigeration, and they're easily prepared. Things such as canned foods, dehydrated foods, but once open, don't require that refrigeration, and they can stay on your countertop. And think also about apples or oranges. Bananas are fine, but you know how fast bananas can go brown down here. But those types of fruits are also great items to include in your kit. Think about canned SpaghettiOs, chili, and so forth. Easy to open and have as some type of a meal. Here's some examples for dairy. Think about some powdered milk or canned milk. Again, anything that's shelf stable like puddings. There's some ideas for some grains, some wraps or tortillas, some fruit. Again, be careful with your bananas, but there's raisins and apples and trail mixes and so forth. Vegetables, there's canned vegetables, your carrot sticks, canned stew, low sodium soups, and protein, peanut butter, sun butter, nuts, or canned beans, refried beans, and so forth. So what do we mean? That we should also consider foods that are rich in protein and nutrient dense to maintain our strength and energy. So single servings like sized foods or one meal canned foods are great, but be careful that sodium content if you are concerned about your sodium levels. Instant meals, soup mixes, free-dried, all great things, but again, be careful of the sodium content in those products. Powdered foods that require water for reconstituting are a great idea. Those camping meals are also great to have on hand. Avoid foods that are high in sugar and sodium, like jerky and chips and pastries and cookies. And the reason why I put that there is because many of us, including myself, when I get stressed, I like to eat, right? And usually I am the sugar person that goes for the cookies or the candy. But maybe you're the sodium person that likes the jerky and the chips. And at all cost, avoid your leftovers. So some other non-food items to include, besides the flashlights and the batteries and the manual can opener, have some disinfectant wipes, some scissors, disposable plates and cups and bowls, because most likely our water could be compromised and you can't use your water to wash dishes. And make sure you have some bags, large disposable bags that you can place that in, some garbage bags and ties. And include some refrigerator thermometers. Now's a great time. They're very inexpensive to purchase. One for your refrigerator, one for your freezer is a great idea. If you do have a charcoal grill, getting that on all that equipment together is also a great idea. Toilet paper also, and paper towels fly off the shelves in the stores as well. So, stocking up on those is not a bad idea. So let's take a minute and talk about gathering our information. Now, while the weather is still beautiful out, checking your insurance coverage. Are you overinsured? Are you underinsured? If you're a new resident, you probably know your insurance coverage. Inventory your home possessions. So take your cell phone and put it on video and go through each room of your home. Videotaping, don't forget your garage. Don't forget your lanai if you have a pool area. And again, take still shots of the outside of your home, the front, the back, the side. This is what my home looked like on May 22nd when I took these pictures. Gather important papers and documents so that you have them all in one place so that you do decide to leave, you could take them with you, but you should have all those documents with you at all times. So important papers and documents are such as home deeds, veterans papers, passports. I have a wonderful IFAS publication that I'd be happy to send to you that has a list of an exhausting list, really, of all the documents you should have in place, as well as your insurance documents as well. Many times I'm asked, well, what about cash and my wallet or purse? Absolutely have cash. Remember, if we lose power, that means ATM machines are down, as well as credit card machines. So that credit card will not be functional during that event. So having cash is golden. Try not to have big, large bills. Try to have more 5s and 20s and 10s. And whatever amount of cash you feel comfortable carrying. Look at your car maintenance. If you have a spare tire, is that inflated properly? And are all your tires inflated properly? Do you need to get an oil change? Is your car up service good to date, as well as making sure that you have a full tank of gas? And another thing to do, which is time consuming, gather a list of licensed and insured contractors. Be careful because there is so much fraud. So ask your friends, ask your neighbors, Who do you recommend? Who have you used as a roofer, a general contractor, a plumber, an electrician? Call them up, find out what their costs are today on a beautiful day. But remember, costs will increase when we go through a weather event because of supply, and they might not be able to get supply accordingly, as well as help. It will be difficult sometimes for them to get all the help that they need to get jobs completed. So have an idea what their hourly rates are. But to avoid fraud, remember we want a list of those licensed and insured contractors. And again, today is a beautiful day to start researching that. Ask for references and check them out. Obtain written estimates and always get more than one estimate. And you know, when we're stressed after a hurricane event and part of our roof is missing, you know, it's easy to think, yeah, of course I would get more than one estimate. That's a no-brainer. But when you're stressed out, you might not be thinking correctly. You might be very vulnerable and desperate. So you might accept that one estimate. So try to remember more than one. Do not pay in full before the work begins. Believe it or not, that was the #1 culprit of how people got themselves in trouble, by paying in full and by paying in cash. You never want to pay any worker in cash. You always want to leave a paper trail. Do not pay the final balance of work until the work is completed and you are completely satisfied. And a huge red flag is never pull permits for a contractor. That's telling you that they are not licensed and insured. Remember, when we see that cone of opportunity coming down and heading towards our area, so does the whole state, and so does the whole country. So anybody that lives in Ohio or Pennsylvania, wherever, can place that magnetic sign on the side of their truck, head down into Florida. They're neither licensed or insured in the state of Florida, but they're here to help you. Are they licensed and insured? Absolutely not. And are they legitimate? We don't know. So now's a great time to get that list together. And of course, if you ever suspect fraud, there is the hotline at the bottom of the screen. So never be pressured into signing a contract immediately. Get everything in writing, like the total cost, a detailed list of what the project's going to include, a time schedule with some guarantees, a payment schedule. Never sign a contract that has blank spaces. X those out. Make sure that there's a 0 with a line through it. And carefully read any documents before signing. And if you're not comfortable with the language that they're using and in that document, make sure you have somebody else read that document as well. And again, here is that number for the fraud hotline if you didn't jot it down or take a picture of it. So let's speak a moment about some evacuation centers. I know we're already getting short on time, and evacuation centers should be considered a last resort. They are not comfortable. They are not hotels. They're not resorts. They are just that. They are places to evacuate to. So evacuations are called for 2 reasons: for people living in a storm surge or low-lying areas that's prone to flooding, and also for people living in mobile homes, RVs, and boats. You have to remember that law enforcement, when their winds are at a sustained winds of 55 miles an hour, they are not going to be coming out. And EMS and fire sustained winds at 45 miles an hour, they are not going to be coming out as well. You would need to call 911 during a hurricane force winds. You will be able to speak to a call taker and receive guidance over the phone. They will prioritize your emergency, But once streets are cleared and safe and winds have died down, then they will begin to release those trucks and so forth. So should I stay or leave? If it's determined that your home is not safe to ride out a storm, consider staying with a friend. And again, you don't have to go hours and hours away. You can head inward, say even 30 miles away, to but just make sure that their home is safe for you to shelter in. A host home can be a home of a friend or family member who has agreed to temporarily shelter you. So if your home was built after 2002 and you are not in an evacuation level, you may be more comfortable, if your home was built after 2002, you may be more comfortable sheltering in place. And I have worked the shelters, and I will say that many people, even though their home was considered safe, at the end they were by themselves, or it was just a couple, two people living in the home, and they felt that it was just more comfortable to be with other people. It's a more comforting experience. So many times people vacated their home to come to a shelter. Remember, hurricanes can strengthen quickly, and storm surge flooding can close roads well before a storm even makes landfall. Now, this is not a picture of I-75, but this is something that it can look like sometimes in season, right? When we're heading north towards Tampa. You should have at least 2 ways that you can evacuate. So check out the maps and look to see other ways that you can evacuate. Here is the list of evacuation centers that I spoke of earlier. You might note one that's closest to you. Once a shelter is closed down, you will be directed to the next closest shelter. And hurricane evacuation centers, everybody's given 60 square feet for a medically dependent person and their caregiver. This is if you've pre-registered. And to do that, you would go to the county website, and there you will find medical needs program. And you can also apply for transportation to that medical needs evacuation center. But here's what you will need to take. You'll need to take your disaster supply kit with a sleeping bag, mat, pillow, sheet, or blanket. Remember, they will not provide any type of mat or pillow or sleeping equipment for you. These are schools with chairs and tables, and that's about it. And remember, if you're directed to an elementary school, those chairs are going to be very small in comparison to if you're going to a high school, where those chairs would be adult-sized chairs. But think about towels or washcloth, any type of personal hygiene items, extra clothing, shoes. If you wear hearing aids, don't forget them, extra batteries and eyeglasses. And of course, don't forget your medications. You might want to take a folding chair, especially if you are going to an elementary school. Snacks and so forth, if you have any special dietary needs, and something to occupy your time, like quick games, books, a puzzle, and don't forget those important documents. Now, you will be given meals while you're there. Our food and nutrition services will provide meals for you while you're at the evacuation center. And our evacuation centers do allow, all of them do allow for cats and dogs, but don't forget to bring proof of current vaccination, current rabies and license tags, a leash and harness, because you are going to be responsible for the caring of your pet. And also bring with you an appropriate pet crate, because they're going to be in there for several days, so you need something for them to move around freely. So one of the main things I do want to mention that it concerns flooding. And again, sometimes we have some powerful tropical storms that come through. But flooding, it can be an issue down here, and it's really the most common natural disaster in the United States. You never want to drive through flooded waters, never drive around those barricades thinking that I have a big SUV, so I should be fine. And you can see by this chart, 18 to 24 inches of fast-moving water can carry away most large SUVs, vans, and trucks. And again, know those areas in town that flood. So after the storm, I know we're all tired of being inside and we're dying to get out of our homes, see what's going on. We need to make sure we supervise our children, treat intersections with inoperable traffic lights as a four-way stop. If you are leaving your home, never wade in flooded waters, because they can be contaminated through the chemicals that might have come through people's garages, as well as fallen power lines. Be aware of debris, alligators, snakes, and other animals that are driven to higher ground because they've been flooded out of their home as well. And red ants commonly form these floating mats that many times you, as it's approaching you, you're not sure what it is, only to be in the middle of it, and now you're experiencing hundreds of bites. So in other words, stay out of those flooded waters. They can be very dangerous. So here's just some quick takeaways before we end our presentation. Hurricanes can strike at any year, even relatively inactive years. Every storm, regardless of the category, needs to be taken seriously and can present a real threat to our life and our property. And don't play that category game. Never over-rely on an exact forecast track, storm category, or personal experience, because hurricanes and all weather are part of that continuously evolving process. Forecasts can, and they do change. So here are the things that we covered in today's presentation. So just don't be complacent. Get started today on some of the things that we outlined in today's presentation. And again, you might want to consider registering for preparing your food for a power outage, to learn steps on how to prepare your food supply, how to prepare your refrigerator and freezer, how to sanitize your surfaces, and just some general food safety guidelines. Here are my list of resources.